County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Recognize Vice Chair Susan.
Good evening. At this time, Stephen Barrington will have our invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of today and the countless blessings in our lives. We're grateful that our community supports individuals and families across the globe through our crops and manufactured products, and through individuals that were reared in our community but no longer live here. We ask that you look after our leaders. We love you and praise you. Amen.
Thank you, Stephen. Commissioner Peters will lead us in pledge.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Lee. This time, I'd like to get approval for the agenda. I'd like to do two add-ons, a resolution of a tentative award as item 3B and add preparedness resolution to the consent agenda. Is there any questions or comments?
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. This time, planning and zoning, consideration for Taylor's Creek Phase 3. Senior Planner Austin Brenton.
Thank you, Chairman Wooten. Good evening. So just a minor correction. This is the final plat for Phase 2 for Taylor's Creek. That was just a typo on the agenda. The final plat for Phase 2 for Taylor's Creek was reviewed by the Sampson County Planning Board at their August 9th meeting. At that meeting, the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend approval for this final plat. The reason this final plat is before this board tonight, as you may remember, whenever the ordinance was amended, it didn't require final plats to come to the Board of Commissioners anymore. However, due to whenever this one was submitted, they had a vested right to choose which ordinance to apply to it. This subdivision is proposing 23 single-family lots served by individual septic systems being served by county water with a public DOT right-of-way. The property is located in the residential zoning district off of Autry Mill Road. Staff has received all copies of required state permits and has signed the plat and is recommending approval of the final plat. If there's any questions, I can take them at this time.
Is there any questions for Mr. Brenton? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'm going to accept the motion that we received at this time.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Brenton. This time, we have a public hearing regarding the proposed appropriation expenditure for economic development, loan of NC reuse project grant to Cayenne Acquisitions Group. Mr. Barrington, Mr. Starr.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if the board will allow me, I'll just address you from here. The Department of Commerce has awarded Cayenne Acquisitions Group LLC, which is the owner of the property at the Garland Shirt Factory down in the town of Garland, a $250,000 building reuse grant, which will be used to upfit that facility down there so it can get back into service and back into employing folks. Garland Apparel, which is the affiliate company of Cayenne, has made certain commitments in terms of new jobs, and as a result of that, Commerce will reimburse them up to 50% of qualifying expenditures. This resolution would authorize the approval of the grant agreement and the legally binding commitment. Once those are signed, Cayenne will sign a promissory note. We are also going to take a second deed of trust on the property to secure that. The only circumstances under which a repayment situation would come into place is if they don't meet those performance commitments that they've agreed to meet. There is typically a 5% local match on these. However, that is not the case with this particular one. So this is all state funds of $250,000. And I don't know if Stephen, if you wanted to add anything.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Thank you, Mr. County Attorney. Is there any questions for Stephen or Joel from the commissioners? Is there any questions or any comments from the audience? Hearing none, I close the public hearing. Is there a motion, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I move we authorize the execution of the grant for several documents.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. This time, open the public hearing regarding amendments to the economic development budget for fiscal year 21-22. Mr. Barrington and Mr. Clark.
Chairman, County Commissioners, we have been allocated outside of the budget period some additional funding revenue in which we will be expending this year. That includes the $250,000 that's really a pass-through through us, but since we'll be administering that, as well as the $1.28 million grant for the new road and water and sewer extension over at the industrial park. Again, we have to approve this in order for us to be able to use this as part of that process. The last thing is the city of Clinton will be doubling their gift in donation to our department this year. They in response to all the work we've been doing and the foreseeable work we plan to do in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Barrington. Is there any questions for the commissioners for Mr. Barrington? Is there any for the public that's present? Hearing none, I close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I move that we amend the budget as requested.
All those in favor, raise your right hand.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrington. This time, I open a public hearing regarding proposed community transportation program applications. Recognize Ms. Oaks Mosley.
Good afternoon. I have 3 grants that I am recommending that we apply for FY23. The first grant is our administrative grant, which is a total of almost $243,000 with the county match approximately $36,000. A 5310 operating grant, which is for the elderly and disabled. This would be for medical transportation, and $40,000. Has a $20,000 in-kind match, not a monetary match. And then our capital grant is just about $289,000 with a $29,000 county match, and that is for vehicles and office chairs.
Thank you, Ms. Oaks Mosley. Is there any questions from the commissioners for Ms. Mosley? Hearing none, is there any from the public that's present? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we authorize the submission of the transportation grant application documents, including certifying resolutions which designates county managers as official, authorized officials.
Thank you.
Second.
And I have a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item 3, action items. Water District Authorize submission for funding applications. Mr. Reynolds, Mr. West, and Mr. Mitchell from Newberry.
There are 3 jobs on item A that we've applied for before, and we want to reapply because this is the kickoff season for funding. The first one is Keener Well and Water Main Extension. The other one, on the action item, South Eldridge, that's a misprint. It's just Governor Moore Road Water Main Extension. And the other is the big one, Carroll's Interconnection, which consists of Cater Merrick, Herring, and Moon Johnson Road.
So in the agenda items that Lynn provided, there are costs associated with those projects, and just to note that some of those costs have increased since the last time we brought the application. Those increases are directly tied to the market conditions we're seeing right now, especially with PVC pipe. or the pipe has gone up significantly. And then the action item request of the board tonight would be to authorize the funding applications, but also approve the 3 resolutions that are in your agenda packet, which would authorize the submittal of the grant application and also authorize Mr. Causey to act as the designated representative for the application to sign the documents.
All right. Is that now we're doing all 3 projects at once?
Yes, and I think that, I think we need to make a motion on all 3 resolutions to be.
So you want them individually?
Yes.
All right. So Kennerwell Water Main Extension, is there a motion, Commissioner?
Make a motion that we accept that Kennerwell.
Will you take a second? There you go. All right, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you, Commissioners. Is there a motion for South Eldridge Governor Moore Water Main Extensions?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. Harold's Interconnection.
I make a motion for Harold's Interconnection.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. Perfect. All right. Thank you. Wait,
You're welcome.
are you going to speak on the Water District award bid construction for Johnston County Interconnect Phase 2?
Yes, sir.
Well, have at it, sir.
So the Johnston County Interconnect Phase 2, this project was formalized in the agreement that was signed with Johnston County a couple of years ago. It's 8-inch water main on Oak Grove Church Road from US 13 to 55, and then it's also on King Road from 701 back to Keener Road. Is that right? I think I got that. 403, that's right. I'm off the road. So 2 sections of 8-inch water main. Bids were received on Thursday, September 2nd. We received 5 bids. The low bid was Herring and Rivenbark with a bid of $2,109.45. The total available funding for the project is $3.15 million. So this project is significantly under budget as far as the bid prices go. So it was a 100% loan package from the state. So the project being under budget will reduce the loan required to move the project forward.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Is there, so we need to make a motion to award the bid.
We need to approve the resolution of tentative award that was included with that was added to the agenda packet.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Thank you, Mr. West. Appreciate everything y'all do for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Starling, Courthouse Roof Bid Award, Construction Contract and Approval, sir.
Yes, sir. It occurred to me that folks watching from home are probably looking at the back of my head, so I decided to step up here for this one. Mr. Chairman, you have already voted at your last water work session to authorize the award of this bid. In between that time, we have executed a contract with the successful bidder for the roofing project at the courthouse. That is included in your agenda package. We also wanted to include a bid tabulation, which we normally include with these. It was not in the materials in front of you last time, and staff would request that the board vote to ratify the execution of that contract.
And are we looking at the bid tabulation, we're looking at on 75, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And who's the award?
The award is, if you'll recall, there was a bid for a metal roofing material, which it was determined that would not have been suitable for a structure like the courthouse. So this was the low bid for the composite material that is Mr. Henry Faircloth with Generations Construction.
Is there a commissioners or questions or motions?
I make a motion that we ratify the roofing project.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Starling. You can hang on right there and talk to us about the execution of the memorandum.
I will, Mr. Chairman. You have in front of you an item that has been on your agenda before. As we've discussed, the state of North Carolina, through the Department of Justice and the Association of County Commissioners and the League of Municipalities, has reached an allocation agreement. That will include the national opioid settlement, which you've read about recently between what they call the Big Four distributors and manufacturers, including Johnson & Johnson. It will also include the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy, if and when that survives appeal from the U.S. Department of Justice, which it sounds like, if it isn't already under, it's going to be under, and other bankruptcy resolutions. I want to commend the Association of County Commissioners for coming up with what is a really good deal for local governments. Up to 85% of the settlement funds will go directly to local governments in North Carolina. It could be as much as $850 billion dollars in settlement funds, and Sampson County could look to gain as much as $5.26 million based on the allocation agreement. Two things have changed since I last spoke to you about these. The first is the attorney's fee issue that we were concerned about. Since then, Attorney General Josh Stein's office has sent the Association of County Commissioners correspondence stating that they believe that the litigation expenses provision of this does allow counties to pay attorney's fees out of settlement funds, so that has resolved that. The other pressing concern is there's a 5% bonus, so you really get 80% to start with. There's a 5% bonus that the county will get if it signs on before October 1. So obviously we need to go ahead and do that so we don't lose that bonus. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Good work, Mr. Starling.
Well, I can't take much credit for it, but there's a team of a lot of national lawyers that work very hard on this.
Been a lot for us to decipher here in Sampson County. Is there questions from commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move that we adopt the resolution approving the memorandum of agreement.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. Thank you, Commissioners. Mr. Ed Causey, allocation American Recovery Plan funding, sir.
Mr. Chairman, as everyone knows, the designated amount of funding that the county is going to get from the American Recovery Plan is going to be $12,340,152. According to the way the plan is set up, I think we have until December 2026 to expend this money. So we have got sufficient time. I will also tell you that the final rule on how this money is to be spent has not come out, has been expected for the last month, and everybody thinks it's coming out next week. That being said, we would sort of like to do some budgeting so we can get started in the planning process. And do not want to confuse you, but what we're doing tonight, if the board will allow, is we want to do this, to do the first one into two steps. We are proposing that we set up a budget, a general budget for the use of this money to put $8 million in water infrastructure, $2 million for broadband, $750,000 for employee bonuses, $1,590,152 in the contingency. Now, at the same time we say this, and with the people present, I need to make sure that everybody understands. For example, there's still some question, for example, on who will be eligible for the bonuses from the standpoint of when we did the budget and what we were trying to do. If you recall, every employee got a 5% increase this past July. In addition to that, there was some money given for a step increase, the equivalent of a step increase, I guess is maybe not the correct terminology, but trying to move people to midpoint. And that overall equates to about a 7% increase in salaries. From administration standpoint, we're hoping to be able to work this bonus out, which is the equivalent of about a 2% bonus, Mr. Kivett. The idea being is from the standpoint of the last pay study being implemented to the cost of living, this would in effect get us over on an even parity. It would be our hope that if this is done, that we can come back in the next budget and do another 2% cost of living, which would have us on par, except for this year, with the current cost of living. And the 750 is our best guesstimate of what the equivalent of about a 2% bonus would be. Bear in mind, we do not want, if you approve this, do not want anybody to go home thinking this is an absolute till we confirm through the ARP that this is something that is done, and then of course we will bring it back to the board. The other thing that we have got relative to this, and Mr. Chairman, if you would, I would suggest that if the board is receptive to this, to vote on this, and then I'm going to let Lynn talk about a few priority projects that we would like to do, starting with the water infrastructure. The idea being, some of those we think we need to do regardless of how it's going to be funding. As we go through this with broadband and water infrastructure, we are still waiting on the state budget to see if we can do any pairing of getting additional money to complement any of this money that you're allocating. That's a pretty brief overview. Are there any general comments or questions?
That's right, and just to be clear, Mr. Calder, this is a budget and an expected, now the money's not necessarily expected, but expected and allowance how it can be spent.
Yes, and anything that we're spending is going to have to come back for you again anyway, so it's not, you're not giving me a turkey, you're giving me a budget of something to work with, so then we can come back with particular expenditures. If you approve this, we are going to let Lynn talk about a few priority projects that we would like to plan. And again, some of this may be changing as we find out we get state funding, which some projects could be added or taken off. And hopefully we can pair up some of this to get other funding to help us stretch this money even further.
Well, if you all will allow me, let's see, let's talk about the budget, on page 184. Let's talk about that budget and see if we can get approval from the commissioners, and then we'll recognize Mr. Dunn. Is there questions or comments for Mr. Kivett? Commissioner Kivett.
The question I've got, is the state not going to give us some money too on the broadband? I know that's one of the initiatives of the association.
We're hopeful, but a lot of that has not been permanently defined, and even in Lynn's letter, we particularly noted we want to try to match out whatever we're doing, not only with what the state may be doing, but with some of our private providers, and be able to complement and get the biggest bang for our buck. So anything, for example, on the broadband, there would be no expenditure in broadband that was not coming back before the board specifically to talk to you about.
I have no problem with that, but I'd like more detail as we move forward. You know, these are big numbers, and I'd like to have more of an input on.
That's right, strictly for budgeting, strictly to get the process started, so. Vice Chair Lee, anything? Commissioner?
I have a question. Broadband. Star is telling me that for the southern end of the county, Harold's is on the list to do, but they cannot do it because they don't have the wiring and all that stuff to do it with them. How would this money help us to get internet?
Potentially, what we're going to do is we're going to try to continue. We have had some discussions with people, for example, such as Star, to find out what they have got planned. We obviously do not want to go in and spend money on anything for which there's a plan to get it done in the next couple of years anyway. So as we get into this, we hope to be able to pair this money up with other monies to get the broadband. Now, our goal is to use this money to help get the infrastructure in and not in any kind of payments to help people get the services rendered or whatever. But yes, there can be a lot of discussion, and there's nothing specific that I think we have in mind, certainly not $2 million worth of what we have in mind, but those are good questions and stuff that we can sort of take up as we move along.
It's a big push from the federal government, the grant they gave Star. I mean, we have several complete telephone exchanges that are going completely to fiber. So we certainly don't want to double down on any of that. We want to let that play out, even though it might not be as expeditious as we'd all like.
Actually, the challenges that we get into is we get into this and get the final plan. See, I'm not sure that we have the information to tell us how this stuff can be contracted. For example, could we decide we wanted to do a project and just give the money to a vendor, or have we got to monitor and do the contracting ourselves? And I think there's some questions on how that can be done, so we don't want to commit too specifically too soon until we know how that money's got to be monitored, audited, and followed through.
Commissioner Gowan, Commissioner Lee, anything else? Commissioner Gowan? All right, are we comfortable enough to move forward with a vote? Is there a motion? Is there a second? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Mr. Cosby, you got your deal. Mr. Reynolds, talk to us.
The public works staff and the county administration staff and our engineering staff have looked at I've got a wish list. I've got a wish list of about $20 million worth of projects. And we scaled it back to match close to $8 million. And the list that you have in your package is the overhead tank near Spotty's Corner with a booster pump. Keener, we got water pressure problems over in the Clement area, and somewhere along Highway 13, engineers think that we can resolve that. The Keener well, it's already on the list that you approved earlier. We want to double down on that and make sure that it is funded in one way or the other if possible. They may fund it out of Raleigh from what you just approved. It's very important we get that. We have that well installed. South McCullen Road, we've been chasing the funding for that for 2 or 3 years. Governor Moore as well. Lakewood School Road is a big need for water there. Small road off of that, off Lakewood School Road is Bubba Gump Road. We also proposed to run new water lines around Roseboro on the new NC-24. Roseboro has, we're buying water from Roseboro on the west end of the county, and their wells are in pretty suspect shape. So we want to bypass the town and place an overhead tank in that area to increase the pressure. They're starting to expand, they're building subdivisions over near Ultraville, and the water pressure is bare minimum now. So that's our wish list. We feel like that would cover $8 million if it's funded.
Mr. Reynolds, is there any action required here, or is this just for information?
I think it would be helpful if you would give us the okay to pursue these, knowing information's going to come back to you at a later time. This gives us the opportunity to start working on some of these and trying to put them together.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Kidd.
Mr. Reynolds, how did you come up with these projects? Is this?
Some of it is from inquiries from the county, the citizens. They've filled out a petition to add water on their road. Some of it's just to improve the infrastructure. Some like overhead tank. Nobody in the county is going to need one overhead tank. But it's a need that increases the pressure in the county. We're at bare minimum in some areas. We're buying water from Clinton on the west end of the county, and it goes up, it makes it to a vault on the east side of Roseboro, and from there on we buy all our water from Roseboro. And we need more water on the west end. We're supplying all of Ultraville their water now. They're not even using their wells.
Do we have a strategic plan? I know we want to provide all the water we can for the county, but do we have a strategic plan that gives us the priority list, what we got to do first, second, third, to get to that point? And these are on that?
This is on the list. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I've got about 20 projects on priority.
Any other questions or comments from
Yes,
Mr.
I have.
McDonough? Yes,
Do
Commissioner.
you have, Inco on your list and Old Mix Highway? Cause those people been asking for water for
They're
years.
they're on there, but
How
it's,
far
it's
down?
low, it's lower down. It's lower,
Lower priority.
yes. And it's all about numbers.
I take it, well, let me ask this, Lynn. I take it that when you talk about overhead tanks and boosters, that's setting the stage to have the pressure and have the volume to serve out further.
It is, and it's also to help with economic development in those regions too.
I understand.
So,
But it's a building block. In other words,
Yes.
we only got so much water and we only got so much pressure. And, you know, if as we go to expanding lines, we're gonna need this infrastructure to push that water down. Is it?
That's correct.
Push that water out to the customer. Is that an accurate assessment?
yes, sir.
Mr. Reynolds,
Yes, sir.
even though you say they're down on the list for that area, what will you say? Give us,
This is half the list. So it's on the second half.
And hopefully, you know, you keep reading about there seems to be a lot of money, hopefully we can pair this up where there'll be other money that's coming available that's just going to push us to do more. Just hope it's not offset by the inflation of the cost of construction.
Is there any other questions? Is there a motion?
make a motion to approve that they bring back more information and go forward with
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Show it unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. Thank you, Mr. Wood. Appreciate it so much. All right, Mr. Causey, market study for position classifications for certain departments.
Yes, sir, let me give you a little background of where we are on the personnel side of this. In 2015, we contracted with Springstead to do a market study on salaries for our employees. That market study, when it came back, indicated that our salaries were off back in 2015, Mr. Godwin, $3.7 million. The only way we could implement it, and that market study has since been fully implemented, but it took us 4 years to do it, with the cost of about $1 million a year of implementing it. Basically, we were behind in the market study by the time we got it finished, or the full implementation 2018 to 2019. What would have been preferred for us to do, to have been able to do, is have the resources where we could have given regular annual increases and also help the employees move to the midpoint of their grade. That once somebody gets into a specific grade, the goal would be to get them to the midpoint of that grade within 10 years. We have not done that. When the board graciously approved the 5% increase this past summer, David, I think we were showing that as far as cost of living, I think we were showing like a total of 7.2, 7.1, and we did 5, so we were still behind on the cost of living by 2%, and that was part of the motivation for coming back and hoping we can do the 2% in the December timeframe, with the goal being that we can then incorporate another 2% in July, plus whatever the cost of living for this year is going to be, which may not be reachable with what we're hearing is going to be the cost. That being said, it is. Plus the fact we need to continue moving on getting employees to midpoint. So we understand all of that, and I think the board has been very diligent in helping us with that. At the same time, we recognize market conditions, if nothing else, because of COVID have changed, and we need to come back and start looking. So what we are proposing to do is to do a market study and start with our public safety, which is basically the detention center, sheriff's office, and emergency services, do a market study to try to determine where we are relative to those salaries, and go ahead and make those adjustments as quickly as we can determine it can be implemented. The assumption when we do that is that we would come back in subsequent years and we would be doing additional work to make sure that we were dealing with all of the departments in a period, in an appropriate period of time. We do recognize that there are still some challenges at the detention center that we're trying to look at. So we're going to do the market study at the same time. We're internally doing a review for the detention center, and hopefully we can come back and just for that part of the sheriff's office, do something on a temporary fix in a reasonably short period of time to supplement us till we can get the market study to evaluate and confirm that we're on track with what we need to be doing. So what we're asking in this request is we're asking the board to appropriate up to $15,000 for us to negotiate to get a market study for the detention center, sheriff's office, and emergency services.
But in the meantime, Mr. Collins, while all that's going on, in the meantime, you're doing internal work to expedite that need in the detention center.
Yes, sir. And we hope to have that very shortly. And the idea will be when we do that is temporary, which that will then be adjusted with the market study up or down as the case may be. So when you say temporary and intermittent, there's not a guarantee for how long that would be continued.
Well, let's not be an Indian giver, okay?
Well, let's just, I'm hoping we don't overestimate what the market study will.
Yeah, that's why I don't be an Indian giver. Let's give.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is so that we're competitive with surrounding counties, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there any other questions or comments from Mr. Collins regarding the market study and other comments? Hearing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Mr. Collins, it's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Ms. Vice Chair Sue Lee. Well, let's be careful on that here. We don't need to take that one. That's the sheriff.
Items from appointments to the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. I move that we appoint Dulce Danos from the Clinton Police Department, Tiffany Faircloth from the Juvenile Court Counselor, Charlotte Leach from the Triangle South Workforce Development Board, and last, Angela Nicholson from the Harnett County Workforce Development to this committee.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you, Vice Chair Lee. The consent agenda, Is there any questions or comments? Anything that would like to be added or subtracted from the consent agenda, from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
The resolution on preparedness month, that's in the consent agenda, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That we added that,
I'd like to make a comment on this one.
Oh, absolutely.
The North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, the president each year has an initiative. And this year, the president is Frank Williams from Brunswick County. And his is 100 counties prepared. They have been through so many hurricanes, and even last year they had a bad tornado came through and did $27 million worth of damage just in a short period of time. Frank, I know him personally. He works very hard for the association, which the association is for whatever is prosperous for all 100 counties, not just one or two. It's for all. And I think it's a great initiative. There's a lot to be accomplished from that. It helps all the counties, especially the eastern counties that are susceptible to the hurricanes. And it seems like we have more bad weather here than they do anywhere in the rest of the state. So I appreciate this being considered and added to the agenda.
Thank you for bringing it forward, Commissioner Kivett. Really appreciate that. Is there any further comment? Hearing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right. Well, that just leapfrogs us down to item 5, Mr. Collins. You can get the floor again.
I have said enough for one evening, so I have some further comments.
Okay. Fair enough. One of the better. Ms. Holder.
Sir,
We've had no public comments received as of 5 PM. Is there anyone present that wishes to make a comment in the public comment period?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a comment.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I need to do it here up there.
I would, just for the public, Commissioner Kivett,
Yeah.
I would make it there.
Thank you. This is a different perspective, of course. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Well, what I want to do is address the issue of the vaccination mandate. I'm speaking as a recovered patient of COVID, and I'm not speaking against or for the vaccination. I just have a perspective that I think I can give that very few people can. And my takeaway is this: if you think you might have COVID, go get checked and then get treated, because they can't treat you. I went through a hard time. I waited 10 days before I went. Whatever you do, don't do that. But I do have a concern with mandating vaccination. And I'm speaking only for me. No one else, not as a commissioner, but as a citizen. I have my opinion, but I think everyone's entitled to their opinion, whether you're pro-vaccination or you're against vaccination. So I think that's individual right. You need to get with your healthcare provider and do your own research and decide what you want to do. That's just my personal opinion. You can find pros and cons both ways. There's information available out there, a tremendous amount. You've got to discern which is the truest and most recent. As you recall, whenever it first started, we were going to have 2 million deaths. Even if we did shut down the country, and we did, and we didn't have that. So it's a crapshoot. They don't know. The virologists, they are working hard, and I'm very appreciative. I'm appreciative of every healthcare worker. But I just feel that it's wrong to tell anyone what you have to put in your body. And it's not right for me to tell you you can't have the vaccination. It's not right for me to tell you that you've got to take it. Especially if you tell that person you're going to lose your job if you don't do it. That's as un-American as anything that I've ever seen in my life in this country. I am as pro-American as anyone. I'm as red, white, and blue. I got it on right here. I really believe in America. But I've never seen us go down this road before. And I'm ashamed that we're even here. Shouldn't have to do that. It's just not right. It just doesn't pass the smell test. But I'm for it. If you want it, take it. Take one every day if you want. Doesn't matter to me. But you can't tell me not that I've got to take it. And I'm not going to tell you the same. At the same time, as commissioners, we have a job representing all Sampsons, not the ones that are unvaccinated, not the ones that are vaccinated, but all. And we do set policy. However, sometimes that policy is set way above us, and we don't have the latitude to do anything. And I can't think that's kind of where we are at this point. So the people are expecting us to do something that we are not capable of doing because it's not legal. And I have a problem with that. I think it's wrong. We're where the rubber meets the highway, and for the federal government to come in and overstep on this is as egregious as anything I've seen in my lifetime. But there again, we as commissioners are limited in what we can do. And I hate to say that, but I will continue to fight to see that everyone is represented and that no one will be told that you're going to lose your job if you don't do something. just not right. I can't, as a businessman, I can't treat my people that way, but they're telling me I'm supposed to as a businessman. Not right. It's just not right. Anyway, that's my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kivett, for those comments. Is there any other comments from anyone present?
Is the public allowed to speak?
Yes, it's a public comment period, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And if you would, state your name and, what else is it we need, Ms. Holden? Address? Name and address.
Hello, my name is Harriet Ryan, and I'm a retired nurse. And I'm going to what Mr. Kivett has said. We are in a pandemic, and we all have our rights. We all have our personal rights. But when your rights is infringing upon someone else's health, that's another story. We work with patients every day at the hospital trying to save their lives who have been affected with COVID. Some has been brought in by families. Some have been brought in by coworkers. Some have brought in by they don't know. Some people carry the virus and they don't know they have the virus. But at least if you have the vaccine, you will be some protected. 4% from Pfizer, 4% from Moderna, and 5% from Pfizer. So during a pandemic, this is my personal feeling. Personal feelings goes out. When we were younger, we had no choice. We were told we had to receive smallpox. We had to receive polio. We didn't know what that vaccine consisted of, but we had to do it. And I think the same thing should be done with the COVID vaccine.
Thank you, Ms. Bryan, for those comments. Is there anyone else? Anyone else? Hearing none, I will make a motion that we recess and reconvene. Gosh, it's right above them.
And when you will, Mr. Chairman, when you do it, you'll add subsection 3 to the attorney-client privilege.
Okay, well, why don't you tell us, so we're going into closed session, GS 143-318.111.
3 and 5.
3 and 5,
Yes, sir.
there you go. Well, now, we're not adjourning, we're going into closed session, my apologies. Don't know how long we'll be, but, y'all welcome to hang out right here and, well, actually, where will we go to closed session?
We're gonna
stay right here. Oh, I have to invite you to leave. My apologies.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for coming. Mr. Richards, have you got us? Oh, do we need a motion?
Yeah.
Oh, my gracious, I'm
I move
lost.
that we go to closed session. We're alive, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Make a motion, we come out of closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Out of closed session. Now, after that wonderful closed session, I make a motion, we recess, reconvene September 27th, 2021, 6 p.m. for the Sampson County Regional Medical Center Annual Budget Presentation. It may be virtual.
It is virtual. At the
Well-
time we printed this, we didn't know that it would definitely be virtual.
Would you like me to stand for that correction, or is it okay if I
It's
say?
fine, so. I just want, I didn't want you to get away and think that it was not virtual.
It's gonna be virtual, and,
Why is it virtual?
COVID. We don't want any more COVID exposure. It would normally be at the hospital
Oh,
hospital.
that.
because of COVID exposure.
Went over my head, I'm
okay, here we go. I made the motion, can I please get a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
This is what we have to do.
everybody.